My name is Emily. I was born when my parents were in their 40s and already had a 13-year-old daughter named Laura. Laura was the pride of the family, and to them she was enough. We never planned to have a second child, my mom often said, not with malice but without hiding the truth either. In moments like that I would stay silent, fully aware that my existence came from the urging of my maternal grandparents. They were the only ones in the family excited about my arrival, having pleaded with my parents to have another granddaughter. But to my parents, I was merely a responsibility they were forced to bear. By the time I was born, Laura was already a teenager absorbed in her own world, hanging out with friends, preparing for SATs, and having endless conversations about college. I can't recall a single time when Laura genuinely paid attention to me. She wasn't mean, but she acted as if I didn't exist. While I played with my dolls alone in the corner of the living room, Laura would lounge on the sofa, engrossed in phone conversations with her friends. Laura, don't forget your SAT books, my mom would remind her, carefully packing them into her bag. Meanwhile, I sat quietly at the dining table with my math homework in front of me, waiting for someone to notice that I also needed help. But no one ever did. My parents quickly established a routine that shaped my entire childhood. Every morning they dropped me off at my grandparents' house before heading to work. "Here's your little one," my dad would say to my grandpa, jingling his keys as if he couldn't wait to hand me over. My grandparents' home became my true refuge. They picked me up from school, helped me with my homework, took me to the park, and always made sure I was well fed. I found myself late at night. My parents would come to get me, often looking tired and slightly irritated by the obligation. "Emily, you're the best thing that ever happened to us," my grandma would whisper as she hugged me tightly. In those moments, I almost forgot what it felt like to be rejected by my parents. At home, however, life was a constant reminder that I was an unnecessary child. When Laura left for college, I hoped, just a little, that my parents might finally pay more attention to me. I was wrong. "Emily, clean the bathroom," my mom called out as soon as I walked through the door after school. All of Laura's old household chores were passed down to me, along with a slew of new ones. I quickly adapted to doing laundry, cleaning, and eventually cooking. When I turned 15, my mom abruptly declared, "You're old enough now. From now on, you'll handle dinner." And that's how I started learning to fend for myself in the kitchen, teaching myself to cook. From simple dishes like spaghetti, to more elaborate meals. All to serve my parents. My life became an endless cycle of responsibilities and indifference. My parents only saw my worth through the chores I completed, and even when I did everything perfectly, they never expressed satisfaction or genuine interest in me. I grew used to being overlooked in my own home, though deep down, I always held on to the hope that one day, they would change. But that day never came. My maternal grandparents, Harold and Margaret, were the guiding light in the otherwise gloomy days of my childhood. Every morning when my parents dropped me off at their house, a wave of relief washed over me. It was the only place where I truly felt loved. "Emily, you're a little angel," Grandma Margaret would often say, gently stroking my hair. She had a way of making me feel special, even when the rest of the world seemed to see me as a burden. Grandpa Harold was the most patient person I've ever known. During afternoons spent working on homework at the dining table, he would sit beside me, carefully guiding me through each number and calculation. "You're doing great," he would say, his eyes sparkling with pride whenever I solved a difficult math problem. To my grandparents, I wasn't the forgotten child. I was the heart of the warm, loving world they had created. When this physical world went away, on weekends they would always take me to the park or the library. Those were rare moments when I experienced true joy, laughing and playing without worrying about the endless chores waiting for me at home. I still remember the time Grandpa Harold took me to a small bakery near their house. "Emily, would you like to try this?" he asked, pointing to a cupcake topped with a swirl of frosting. It was the first time I felt that someone genuinely wanted to make me happy. When they settled on a loaf, Grandma Margaret also taught me how to care for the flowers in her little garden. "See, Emily? Flowers need love and care just like people do," she said, carefully pulling out weeds. Every time I saw the flowers bloom, I felt a sense of peace. As if the wind carried my worries away. My grandparents didn't just give me love, they also taught me invaluable lessons. Emily, life isn't always easy, but you have to learn to stand tall, Grandpa Harold would say during our heart-to-heart talks. They weren't wealthy, but they always saved what they could so I wouldn't lack anything. Grandma Margaret often told me that from the day I was born, they had opened a small savings account for me, just in case Emily ever needs it. I didn't know then how that money would later change my life, but I did know that their love and sacrifices made me feel incredibly fortunate. The years I spent at their house were not only a refuge from my troubled childhood, but also a foundation for the person I would become. While my parents saw me as a responsibility, my grandparents saw me as their pride and joy. They taught me to be strong, grateful, and never to give up, no matter how hard life became. One day, I asked Grandma Margaret why they loved me so much. She simply smiled and replied, "Because you deserve it, Emily. You're a gift that heaven sent to us." Those words etched themselves into my heart, and became a source of strength that would help me overcome challenges in the years to come. Whenever I came home from a long day at school and saw their radiant smiles welcoming me, I knew I had found where I truly belonged. It wasn't the house where I was born, but in my grandparents' home I learned what unconditional love really meant. Those memories didn't just help me endure the hardest parts of my childhood, they became a beacon of hope that would guide me through the darkest moments of my life. Everything we teach about love, it's the wind that never ends, and so every one of us deserves an opportunity to manifest those lessons. When I graduated from high school, with excellent grades and 3 acceptance letters from top universities, I had hoped that my efforts would finally be recognized. I held the letters in my hands, filled with pride and excitement. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I thought my parents would finally see my worth. But I was wrong. That evening, I placed the 3 letters on the dining table and shared the news with my parents. "I got accepted into NYU, UCLA, and Michigan State," I said, unable to hide my excitement. Their response, however, left me stunned. My mom, not even bothering to look up from her plate, simply said, "That's good news, but we don't have the money to pay for your college." I froze. "But Mom, you paid for Laura's college, and even spent thousands of dollars on her wedding," I protested, my voice trembling. She shrugged, her tone indifferent. "Laura's different. We saw potential in her." The words pierced me like a knife. Everything I had done, all the late night studying and sacrifices to achieve top grades, was dismissed with a cold, simple statement. My dad added, "If you really want to go to college, get a job and take care of yourself. Adults take responsibility for their own lives." I didn't say another word for the rest of the evening. After dinner I went to my room, tears streaming silently down my face. I couldn't believe that the people who gave me life could be so heartless. The next morning, I gathered the courage to call Grandma Margaret and tell her everything. She listened quietly, and then said, "Emily, come over right now, we need to talk." When I walked through their door, Grandma Margaret was already waiting, her arms wide open to embrace me. "We knew this day would come," she said, her voice warm but firm. I looked at her in confusion. Grandpa Harold emerged from his office holding an old briefcase. "Sweetheart, we've been preparing for this day for a long time," he said, opening the case to reveal a stack of bank. Grandma Margaret explained. "When you were little, we started saving. We knew your parents wouldn't treat you the same as Laura, and we couldn't let you be disadvantaged." Each number on those papers was a testament to their love and foresight. "This money is enough for you to attend any university you choose," Grandpa Harold said, his eyes full of hope. I couldn't hold back my tears. "You did all this for me?" I choked out. "Of course, Emily," Grandma Margaret replied, her eyes shining. "You deserve the best." Thanks to their savings, I decided to attend New York University, where I knew I could pursue my dream of a career in finance. The days leading up to my move were busy, and my grandparents were by my side every step of the way, helping me fill out forms, buy supplies, and get everything ready. My parents barely showed any interest. "Do whatever you want," my mom said dismissively, when I informed her of my decision. On my first day walking through the university campus, I felt as though a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Every step I took on the brick path leading to the lecture halls was a step away from the shadows of neglect and injustice. I made a promise to myself that I would never waste the sacrifices my grandparents had made for me. I would live a life that would make them proud, because I knew that everything I had achieved was thanks to their unconditional love. My college years at New York University marked a major turning point in my life. Leaving behind a cold, unjust home, I began a new chapter where I could truly be myself. On my first day of class, I carried not only my dreams but also the hopes and love that my grandparents had instilled in me. I reminded myself that I could not afford to let them down. College life wasn't easy, but I loved every moment of it. Every lecture and project was a challenge I embraced with enthusiasm. Late nights spent studying in the library didn't discourage me, instead, they fueled my determination. I frequently called my grandparents to share small classroom victories, and every time, they cheered me on with warm encouragement. "You are our greatest pride, Emily," Grandpa Harold once said during a phone call, his voice filled with pride. The Americano classic was my favorite. Those words became a source of strength, helping me get through even the toughest days. In my sophomore year, I started an internship at a small financial firm. It was my first opportunity to apply what I had learned, and I quickly discovered I had a talent for financial analysis. "Emily, you have a rare gift for logical thinking," my supervisor told me during a midterm evaluation. That compliment reassured me that I was on the right path. By my final year, I had secured an internship at one of the largest financial firms in New York. The job provided not only valuable experience but also important connections. I worked harder than ever, not just to prove myself, but to feel deserving of the sacrifices my grandparents had made for me. When I graduated with honors and received a job offer from the company I had interned with, I knew I had achieved something I once thought impossible. During this time, my relationship with my parents grew increasingly distant. They rarely called to check in, and I didn't feel compelled to reach out either. My sister Laura occasionally sent short messages about her family's financial struggles with her husband James. Each time I read those messages, I felt a cold detachment. The pain that had once haunted me was gone, replaced by an acceptance that the gap between us was inevitable. In contrast, my bond with Grandma Margaret and Grandpa Harold remained as strong as ever. I frequently visited them during school breaks, bringing stories of my work and life. The warm dinners at their home were moments of true belonging. No pressure, no expectations, just pure, sincere love. Grandpa Harold often said, "Seeing you now, I know everything we did was worth it." Those words always brought tears to my eyes, reminding me that they were my true family. My career at the financial firm began to stabilize, and within 3 years I was promoted to project manager. The high salary and generous bonuses allowed me to purchase a small apartment in Manhattan, a dream I had never dared to imagine. On the day I moved in, I invited my grandparents to my housewarming party. Grandpa Harold looked around the apartment and smiled. "Emily, you did it! This is the result of all the hard work you've put in." Standing in my own apartment, seeing the pride in my grandparents' eyes, I knew I had not only overcome my past but also built a bright future. I made a promise to myself that the love and values my grandparents had taught me would always guide me. They had given me more than just support. They had given me the foundation to thrive, and the belief that I could accomplish anything. The greatest loss of my life occurred one early autumn day when I received a call from the hospital. Grandpa Harold had suffered a severe heart attack and didn't survive. I rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. He had passed away peacefully in his sleep, his face serene as if he were dreaming of something beautiful. I collapsed under the weight of the news. He had always been by my side, the one who taught me how to face life with strength. And now? He was gone. Grandma Margaret was devastated by the loss. After more than 50 years by his side, she seemed to lose much of her will to live. I did my best to support her, but just 2 months later, she too left me forever. It was a time when I felt as if my entire world had crumbled. I had lost the 2 people who loved me most, and showed me what unconditional love truly meant. After the funeral, Their lawyer invited me to his office to read their will. I knew my grandparents wanted to protect me, but I didn't expect that they had left everything to me. The house where I had grown up and a $250,000 savings account were entrusted to me, along with a handwritten letter from Grandpa Harold. In the letter, he wrote, "Emily, you are our greatest pride. What we've left behind is not just material wealth, but our belief that you will continue to live a life of dignity and purpose. Use this to build the future you deserve." I read the letter through tears, feeling the immense love and faith they had placed in me. Meanwhile, my sister Laura's life was falling apart. Her husband James lost his job and couldn't find stable work. Laura's career in marketing hadn't turned out the way she had hoped. With 2 young children and mounting debts, they were forced to move back in with our parents. The house that had once been cold and unwelcoming to me was now overcrowded and chaotic, with 4 additional people. It became a giant undercrowded, a type of depression that lasted into the midst. So, 2 years later, after my sister's recovery, I heard about this through mutual acquaintances, but no one from the family reached out to share their struggles or seek comfort. One day, my parents unexpectedly showed up at my apartment door, looking exhausted and drained. They sat down and began talking about Laura and James's hardships. "They can't afford their rent, and we're running out of money too," my mom said, her eyes filled with hope. "Emily, can you help? Your niece and nephew need a stable home." I sat silently for a long moment, as memories of my cold, neglected childhood flashed through my mind. Finally, I replied, "I'm sorry, but I can't help. Everything I have is thanks to Grandma and Grandpa, and I intend to honor their wishes by using it to build the future they wanted for me." My parents left, visibly disappointed and bitter. Not long after, Laura called me, accusing me of being selfish and heartless, but I knew I had made the right decision. The love my grandparents had given me was something I couldn't betray by handing it over to people who had never valued me. I decided to sell the house my grandparents had left me and use the funds to invest in my own business. I opened a small financial consulting firm focused on helping people like my grandparents, working-class families in need of guidance to manage their finances and secure their futures. Every day at work, I thought of Grandma and Grandpa, of their quiet sacrifices and boundless love. Their legacy became my motivation, driving me to create something meaningful that would endure. Through my efforts, I sought to honor them, not just in memory, but through the lives I helped improve, inspired by the love they had given me. After selling my grandparents' house, I used the money to buy a new home, a place I hoped would be the start of my fully independent life. It was a charming house in the suburbs with a spacious yard and a peaceful atmosphere. I had considered inviting my parents and Laura over to mend our relationship, but before I could do so, something happened that shattered any hope of reconciliation. The moment the change forever started afresh, but when it did, I smiled and nodded at Noah. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a post from Laura. The words felt like a slap to the face. "Can't wait for the housewarming party this weekend at my parents' gorgeous new home. So grateful I could help make it happen." The post included pictures of the house I had just bought, decorated with balloons and a lavish party setup. I froze, feeling an overwhelming sense of betrayal. At first, I couldn't believe it. I called my mom, trying to stay calm. "Mom, I just saw Laura's post. Are you having a housewarming party at my house?" I asked. There was a brief pause before she responded. "Well, Emily, we just wanted to throw a small gathering. You've been so busy, so we didn't want to bother you," she said softly. But the lie in her words made my blood boil. I drove to the house immediately. As I pulled up, I heard music and laughter coming from inside. I walked through the unlocked front door and was stunned by what I saw. The house I had bought through my hard work was filled with strangers. My dad stood in the center of the living room, cheerfully chatting with a group of guests. "We're so proud of this new home," he announced loudly, "and we have to thank our wonderful daughter Laura for helping with the finances." I stepped further into the room and his voice faltered when he saw me. All eyes turned toward me. "Emily," my dad tried to compose himself, but I had reached my breaking point. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said firmly, my voice cutting through the room. This house is mine. I bought it with my own money. Neither Laura nor anyone else had any part in that. The room fell into an awkward silence. Laura's face flushed as she stared at the floor, and my mom avoided eye contact. Emily, we were just trying to have a family gathering, she began, but I didn't let her finish. A family gathering where I wasn't even invited? And you lied, claiming Laura helped buy this house? This is beyond unacceptable. I turned to the guests. Thank you for coming, but this party is over. Please leave my house. The crowd quietly gathered their things and left without a word. My parents and Laura were the last to leave, their expressions a mixture of guilt and resentment. Just before walking out the door, my mom turned to me and said, "You're being incredibly selfish, Emily." I didn't respond. I simply closed the door behind them. That night I sat alone in the empty house, my mind racing with conflicting emotions. I knew I had done the right thing, but the pain of my family's betrayal cut deep. This house had once been a symbol of my success, but now it was a painful reminder of the irreparable rift between me and the people who had given me life. After a sleepless night of reflection, I made a decision. I would sell the house. Not because I was weak, but because I wanted to free myself from the painful memories it now held. I needed a fresh start in a new place, one untainted by the wounds of my family's betrayal. It was time to move forward, leaving the past behind, and building a future free from their shadow. After selling the house, I felt as though a tremendous weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The money from the sale was deposited into my savings account not just as a preparation for the future, but also as a reminder of the independence I had built with my own efforts. I made the difficult decision to cut all contact with my parents and Laura. It wasn't easy, but I knew that maintaining those relationships would only continue to hurt me. Sometimes, letting go is the only way to truly heal. In the days that followed, I focused on my work and personal life. I moved into a smaller but cozy apartment that was entirely my own. This space brought me the peace I had been searching for. Every morning I brewed a cup of coffee, sat by the window overlooking the city, and reminded myself of how far I had come. Overcoming the pain and challenges of my past. Through persistence, I in fact returned myself to okay. In moments of quiet reflection, I often thought about Grandpa Harold and Grandma Margaret. Their guidance and unconditional love continued to be the compass for my decisions. I made a promise to myself that if I ever had children, I would love them equally and unconditionally. They would never feel compared or abandoned as I once did. I wanted to create a family where every member felt valued and cherished. One day, while walking through a nearby park, I saw a mother playing with her 2 young children. The sight made me smile and brought back fond memories of my time with my grandparents. In that moment, I realized I didn't need a perfect family to become a good parent. What mattered was that I had learned from the mistakes of others, and knew how to give love. As time passed, I gradually built a new life, one that was fuller and more meaningful. My financial consulting business flourished, and I dedicated part of my income to supporting organizations that helped children and struggling families. I believed that the best way to honor my grandparents was to help others who needed a little kindness and support to overcome their hardships. Although I no longer spoke with my parents and Laura, I didn't feel lonely. I surrounded myself with new relationships, friends and colleagues who genuinely valued and supported me. I also learned how to forgive, not to reconcile with those who had hurt me, but to free myself from the burden of pain and anger. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, it meant accepting that the past couldn't be changed, but the future could. One morning while journaling, I wrote down a promise to myself. I will become the person I once wished I had in my life. That promise became a driving force, motivating me to continue striving, not only in my career, but also in building a future I could be proud of. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but I knew I was ready for it. I had learned how to love myself, to heal from the wounds of the past, and to build a life founded on love, fairness, and hope. And one day, when I have children, they will not endure the pain I once did. They will grow up surrounded by love, support, and the unwavering belief that they are always worthy. Because that is how I will love them. Just as Harold and Margaret loved me. The takeaway from this story is the importance of love, fairness, and independence. Family wounds can leave deep scars, but they do not define who we are. The sacrifices and unconditional love from the grandparents teach us that true family isn't always about blood relations, it's about the people who love and value us. More importantly, learning to stand on our own, build our lives, and love ourselves is the key to overcoming pain and creating a brighter future. What are your thoughts on this story? What lessons did you take away from it? Don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss more heartwarming and meaningful stories about family and life. The upcoming stories will make you reflect and inspire you.
Hey, how are you doing? Could things get really dangerous here? I ran across my middle school girlfriend from back when I was on a helicopter trip with my coworkers. She introduced the older man she was putting arms with alongside her without my asking. This is my significant other. He works for a hotel company as a manager. And you most likely failed the admission tests for high school. Is this just some ungrateful middle school graduate now? Laughing, she said. But all of a sudden, the pilot became ill and an emergency arose. What the hell is going on? My girlfriend of the past cried out in horror. Saying this with composure, I'll fly the helicopter instead. What? My name is Sean. I work for an airline as a captain. I have always enjoyed airplanes and have requested my dad to take me to the airport frequently since I was a young child. I once spent a holiday reading my favorite aviation encyclopedia while waiting in the airport lobby. Out in front, I heard a voice calling out to me. Do you like airplanes too? I saw a girl of my age with pigtails of blonde hair when I looked up. She gave me a questioning look and gestured to my encyclopedia. I'm Ashton. It is about to take off on the following flight. Do you want to see the aircraft with me? Ashton took hold of my hand and dragged me along before I could respond. Her audacity confused me a little, but I was happy to have connected with another aviation lover. She told me she used to go to the airport to see her father off. He was a frequent traveler for work. Planes are so huge, but how do they even fly? Ashton whispered as we watched the aircraft calmly wait for its occupants on the runway. I flipped open my encyclopedia and excitedly imparted my knowledge. The wings create lift, which pushes against the air, and then the jets thrust the plane forward and up into the sky. She hadn't inquired, so I continued my enthusiastic explanation of how planes operated. When I eventually finished, Ashton inquired, Do you want to build airplanes someday? As she listened in amazement. Yeah, I happily nodded. However, Ashton put her palm on her chin and had a serious expression on her face. She suddenly brightened and remarked, I think I like pilots more, as she saw a pilot go past. Don't they look so awesome in their uniforms flying the plane? I was simply glad to have a friend who shared my passion for airplanes, even though I didn't completely get what she was saying at the moment. I therefore made a careless pledge. Okay, I'll become a pilot, and when I do, I'll take you on a flight. For better or worse, this experience shaped my entire life. I saw a girl in my class when I first started elementary school, and she was still the same blonde with pigtails. Is that you, Ashton? Do you still recall me? At the airport, we got together. I walked up to her, excited beyond control. Oh, you're the guy who used to adore airplanes. What a coincidence that we are currently attending the same school. Doesn't it feel like fate? We clicked right away, and even though we were still young, I couldn't shake the feeling that our paths were meant to cross. Do you remember the promise we made back then? I inquired. I do, of course. I promised to marry you when you became a pilot, Ashton replied, acting older than she actually was and even teasingly promising to propose. After that, I took my desire to become a pilot very seriously and started studying geography, meteorology, and navigation in addition to standard academic courses. I also refrained from playing video games in order to preserve my vision, which was essential for training to be a pilot. As far as possible, I likewise avoided watching TV until absolutely essential. I found it difficult to participate in my classmates' chats and was unable to keep up with what was popular at school, which made my school days seem difficult and drawn out. But then I thought back to the promise I had given Ashton, and I told myself I didn't need any more friends as long as I could continue to remain close to her in order to keep my word. I continued to work hard by myself. When my parents saw how committed I was, they started to help me too. Rather than dissuading me from pursuing my passion, they bought me books to aid in my studies to become a pilot. My dad used to take me go-karting on the weekends so I could practice. I once lost track of my parents in the packed airport while on a trip that was part of my family's studies and leisure itinerary. When I was a little child, I became scared and started crying. A man with a pilot's cap suddenly walked over to me. "Hey, how are you doing? Are you apart from your parents?" "Yeah." "Well, how about we go find them together?" I went to the lost and found department with him. After a general announcement was made in the airport, I waited for my parents to arrive. He stayed with me, keeping me company as we waited. "Do you like airplanes?" "Yeah." "Hey, let me tell you something. My occupation is flying." "Are you serious? One day, I want to be a pilot." "How did you end up being one?" "That's fantastic. To become a pilot, I had to study a lot. It was difficult, but you were capable as well. One day, I hope to see you piloting aircraft and donning a headgear similar to mine." "Yeah, I'll do my best." I got the strength I needed from talking to him, and before I realized it, I no longer felt afraid. Soon after, my parents came, and I said my goodbyes to the gracious pilot. However, his advice stayed with me, and I started to look up to him as a pilot that day. "I'm going to be a cool pilot like that man," thought I. I had an even busy schedule when I started middle school. I, of course, began to spend less time with Ashton. But I figured she would understand, as she was aware of my desire to become a pilot and had always been supportive of me. But Ashton started talking about her frustrations over time. "My pals and their guys go on a lot more dates. Do you really not give a damn about me?" My workload from studying was so heavy that I wasn't always patient. Some days I ended up yelling at her. "To honor my pledge to you, I'm studying really hard. Are you blind to that?" We began to argue more and more, our discussions invariably devolving into war. This continued for a few rounds before my relationship with Ashton started to go south. Time went by with nothing we could do about it. Then, one day, as I was getting ready for my entrance examinations to high school, something occurred. I was studying when I came upon a scene that stopped me cold on my way back from the library. Ashton was strolling hand in hand with an unknown man, appearing quite comfortable. I went home and began second-guessing myself since I lacked the guts to approach her at that point. Perhaps it was nothing at all. Or perhaps it was just a close relative. I told myself that, but the following day I made the decision to speak with Ashton directly. "Hey, who was that guy you were with yesterday? Is it really that important? It's not like you have any say over who I spend my time with because we're not married or anything. I can spend time with anybody I choose. Besides, you ignore me, so I was just passing the time," Ashton stated without expressing any regret. I tried to force a response out of my parched mouth, only to find that I hated Ashton. Without anything to respond, I turned to leave. All I needed to do right now was concentrate on my academics. I continued thinking about her remarks and found it impossible to focus at all, even though I tried to tell myself. After all, the promise I gave Ashton had to do with my dream of becoming a pilot. Did being a pilot really matter any longer if this was how things were between us now? Why had I put forth so much effort? I started to lose focus on why I was pursuing my dream. I eventually lost interest in my academics and was unable to get into the high school of my choosing. Ashton was enraged to learn that I had failed my tests. What? Is my significant other retaking a class? That is not excused. You tolerated me for so long, telling me you were taking care of me. And now this. Never get in touch with me again. An engagement ring from our childhood. That isn't true. And with that, she immediately ended our relationship. Wait, hold on. I nearly came up with an explanation, but it was watching Ashton go with such ease that I realized our relationship was really finished. I went home and locked myself in my room. For how long have I been doing this? Was this catastrophe the result of all my efforts? Books on aerodynamics and pilot certificates crowded my bookshelf. I thought about tossing it out, but then I noticed one rather tatty airline encyclopedia. Yes, the exact book I was holding when I first met Ashton. In retrospect, I realized that book was the catalyst for our friendship and the reason I wanted to become a pilot. My life suddenly came back to me in a flash. The late-night study sessions I spent massaging my tired eyes, the smiling faces of my parents as they listened to me talk about my dreams, and the day I met the man who would eventually become my role model at the airport. Once more, I asked myself, what do I truly want to do? I finally realized that I didn't want to give up. It was all for my promise to Ashton initially, but it had evolved into something more. I understood that my progress was being fueled by pride, expectations, and adulation. I got myself together after that and carried on with my studies. I didn't have to retake a year of school because I had really obtained a position at another institution. After attending aviation school and earning my commercial pilot license, I accrued flight hours to serve as an instructor before being employed by a small airline. After extensive training, I eventually attained co-pilot status. I continued to train with the captain even as a co-pilot, and at the age of 32, I was promoted to captain. My friend Walter, who started working for the airline the same time I did, volunteered to take me on a helicopter tour as a way for us to celebrate. Walter and I were waiting in line for our turn on the day of the tour when I heard a familiar voice. What? Are you also present here? I looked over and saw Ashton walking hand in hand with a man in his middle years. Even though she was now a mature woman, I could still recognize aspects of her from when we were in middle school. She started bragging without my having to ask. Oh, Tony, this dude is my boyfriend. He works for this airline as a section chief at a chain of hotels. How about you? I take it that you gave up on being a pilot and are now merely a middle school graduate. And there are two guys here, really. Is this a date or something similar? She teased me with a sarcastic laugh. Walter appeared to be poised to blow out after overhearing. What on earth are you discussing? This individual. However, I quickly covered his mouth since I didn't want to be around her any longer. I apologize, but you're going to have to cooperate with me here, I said to him. Yes, it is correct. It seems like you're doing okay. I gave her a cool response and chose not to answer her further. Have a nice flight, she replied. When Ashton and Tony's turn finally arrived, they were clearly becoming agitated because they were not being called in. Ashton finally lost it and began yelling at the employees. Hey, it's been 30 minutes since we left. What is happening? Well, actually, the helicopter pilot fell a short while ago, and we're currently trying to figure out a solution, the troubled-looking staff member replied. Tony raised his voice and joined in upon hearing this. What? This cost a lot of money that we paid. Sort things out right away. Can't you locate another pilot? Staff members were stuttering, I'm sorry. Hey, looks like this is your chance, Walter said softly in my ear as he observed the chaos. Teach that horrible woman a lesson and show them what you've got. I was a flight instructor back then, and even though I was really busy, I had managed to obtain a helicopter license, so I could fly one just fine. Though there was a tiny part of me that wanted to prove something, I really didn't want to get connected with Ashton. I reluctantly moved ahead to talk with the employees. If it's okay, I can fly the helicopter instead. I spoke, and Ashton and Tony just gazed at me, stunned to silence. The personnel asked for further instructions by radioing upwards after I showed them my pilot's license. The personnel returned after a little while, said, "Thank you for your help," and led me to a room where I could change into the outfit that had been prepared. I received a briefing before getting ready to board the helicopter. Ashton and Tony were led over, looking perplexed, while I was getting ready. Ashton's doubts about me realizing my dream disappeared from her eyes the moment she saw me in uniform. Her mood turned totally, and she gave me an admiring look. Sensing the uneasy tension, I had to add a little revenge of my own. "Are the two of you dating? I'll see to it that you have an amazing flight beneath the stars. I'll work really hard to make it unique for you." Still stunned, Ashton was unable to reply. Disregarding it, I began narrating the tour as though I were speaking to myself. The Statue of Liberty, a representation of New York, is visible to your right. It was a gift from France in 1886 and is now used as a representation of democracy and freedom in the U.S. And Manhattan will be to your left. Ashton was astonished at first, but she eventually began to pay attention to my commentary. When the tour came to a conclusion and we touched down, her eyes were nearly glistening with appreciation. Tony's expression became apprehensive upon realizing this. With a composed expression, he fixed his suit, dug into his pocket, and gave me a tip. "I want to thank you for the amazing flight. I've attached a small item for your inconvenience." "Many thanks for it. Enjoy the remainder of your evening," I murmured, glad that the task was finished and eager to get out of Ashton's sight. But Ashton interrupted, frowning at Tony. "What are you doing, in your opinion? Don't get in my way. I was going to invite him out to dinner and tip him." She was reaching out of her seat and putting her arm around mine before I knew it. At the same moment, Tony and I both shouted out, "Huh! Isn't this guy your boyfriend?" I questioned with hesitation. Ashton answered confidently and shamelessly, "Well, he was. However, you are now my fiancé. Now that we're back together, the previous commitment comes first. I'm not really sure what you're discussing. Remember that you were the one who ended our relationship. You acknowledged that our childhood pledge was meaningless. In addition, I'm over my affections for you," I said icily, attempting to make sense of the strange circumstances. But Ashton was not going to give up. "That is untrue. Did you not turn into a pilot for me?" "No. I did it out of pride and ambition for myself. Not wanting her to get the wrong idea, though I do appreciate you for giving me the initial push," I smiled and continued. For a moment, Ashton was astonished, but then he snapped out of it. She gave a sultry whatever, "I'm done with this," and turned back to Tony. Her voice suddenly became lovely as she inquired, "Hey, what should we eat tonight?" Tony answered, "I guess I'm not your boyfriend anymore, right?" Tony was frowning at her now. "I didn't realize you were that gullible. We're through. Never again reveal your face to me." He then gave her such a hard shove that Ashton instantly fell on her ass. "You're so mean." Ashton started crying uncontrollably. "I should be the one crying," mumbled Tony, obviously embarrassed, and hurried off. "Are you all right?" the staff asked as they came over to see how Ashton was doing. She appeared to understand then that everyone was observing her. She whispered, "I'm fine," her face turning a hot crimson, and she made a short bow before hastily turning to leave, her head down. I grinned sarcastically as I watched her go, thinking, it's unbelievable I ever felt anything for someone like that. I turned to Walter and expressed my regret for the outcome. "I apologize, dude. I destroyed your festivities." "Nope, everything is okay." "I thought that was very entertaining," he laughed. Then he grinned mischievously and began making jokes about me. "I'm just relieved that you once had a girlfriend. I had been beginning to worry about you. But really, dude, that relationship of yours was unique. I would prefer to move past that aspect of my history. Let's not discuss it ever again. The personnel chased after us while we were having fun. The pilot who had been feeling under the weather seemed to be totally recovered. Walter and I made the decision to book our own helicopter excursion after learning that. Inside the helicopter, the pilot said, "Thank you so much for today," expressing his sincere gratitude for me filling in and his profuse apologies for having to miss the flight. The pilot then abruptly made me an offer to work for him. "I've heard you flew perfectly. Why not join our team as a worker if you're interested?" I chuckled at first, thinking he was kidding, and said, "Oh no, it wasn't that great." But I could tell he was serious by the look in his eyes. I decided to pretend to be serious as well and graciously rejected. I've wanted to be an airplane captain since I was a kid, so I still want to keep flying planes. Despite his somewhat dejected expression, the pilot grinned and remarked, "I hope we get to work together someday." I received criticism for using another company's helicopter without my own employer's consent a few days later. But I didn't get penalized because it was an emergency, and I had the pilot's and the staff's backing that day. I have a full calendar of flights and am in great demand for my flying abilities right now. I've been so busy that I hardly ever get time to go home, and I still lead a solitary existence without a significant other. But I really am appreciative of Ashton for encouraging me to pursue this ambition, my parents for their support, and the pilot I met at the airport. I wouldn't be where I am now without them. These individuals enable me to find fulfillment in my profession each and every day. With the hope that one day I will inspire someone else as well, I have now taken to the skies once more. Do you believe that someone like you who only has a high school education may get employment elsewhere? With a downcast expression, Miss Anderson spoke. "Carly, I told you the truth about that. In actuality, I'm going to take over as head manager at your place of employment." "How come? What are you trying to say?" Miss Anderson was taken aback, but this was a fact. "My childhood experiences are the reason I want to work in a retail store. My grandfather was a department store manager, so he was extremely close to me and had a big influence on me. Cody Green is my name. I'm a working professional who is 24 years old. I am, incidentally, single and do not currently have a girlfriend. I'm employed for a major department store. I've been employed there for 6 years, having started immediately out of high school. Some people assume that working in a department store is an easy job, but that isn't the case. In actuality, department store work involves a wide range of skills. This is true for the majority of service sectors, but handling challenging clients and irrational complaints is a daily occurrence. Problems are more likely to occur when there are more visitors. It's crucial to keep honing your conversational and product expertise in order to consistently deliver outstanding customer support. It is our responsibility to continue learning in order to provide our clients with a positive buying experience. Selling goods and calling it a day is not enough. The most important things for department store employees to remember are to always look nice, act elegantly, and be the right kind of person for the store. Although working in a retail store may seem glamorous, it's actually very difficult. Even if there were moments when I wanted to give up, I would never forget about my late grandfather. Before he went away when I started primary school, my grandfather owned and operated a department shop in our town that he inherited from his father. My grandfather owned a small department shop, possibly because it was a family enterprise. Still, it was always busy and well-liked by the locals because of his years of experience. The department store was always filled with customers, creating the atmosphere of a lively festival with its flashy displays. My heart would usually skip a beat when I saw the happy shoppers. I cherished the unique ambience of the shop, which was embellished with touches from my grandfather. I requested to go to the department shop whenever I had the opportunity. My grandfather was quite young at heart, even though he was very old. He always wore a neat suit and did his work with efficiency. He was the owner, but he never gave an air of haughtiness. Every time, he walked to the sales floor in humility and took the lead on difficult assignments. Due to his commitment, he was well trusted by his coworkers. My grandfather's personality was a major factor in the department store's happy atmosphere. Normally, everything was quiet, then one day something happened. A patron approached and reported seeing a poorly clothed woman and child in the food court. My grandfather and I went straight to the first floor food court. There was a table with free drinks in front of a mother and child wearing tattered clothes. The two were a small boy, who was approximately my age at the time, and a mother who appeared to be in her 30s. It was obvious, even at a distance, how tired they both were. There were several patrons around who were slightly shaken and uncomfortable. The mother, who was blushing with shame and looking down, must have realized this as well. My grandfather heard one of the women speak to him. "Would you please ask them to leave?" My grandfather heard this and walked gently over to the two. The mother and youngster appeared terrified as he approached, most likely fearing they would be chastised for not placing an order for food. However, my grandfather comforted them by saying, "I'm so sorry for the wait," in a soft voice. "I take it you're here for the interview. This is the direction of the interview room. Kindly go with me." What? When my grandfather said this, the mother's eyes widened in shock. Granted, it was her first meeting, and no official interview was planned, but he took swift action to make sure the two of them would not draw any further interest from obliging bystanders. "Right this way," he said as he led them with an air of professionalism to the reception area. He provided the mother and child drinks and a selection of goodies as soon as they entered the reception area. When I asked the mother, I found out that her name was Karen, and that her son, Taylor, looked about my age. With his eyes brightening at the sight of the munchies, Taylor appeared to be rather hungry. Karen cried as she said, "I'm so sorry for coming to the department store looking like this," to my grandfather. "We've irritated and startled other customers." Karen appeared disheveled, yet her mannerisms and speech were surprisingly sophisticated. My granddad and I were shocked as well. After saying thank you, Taylor also started to devour the snacks neatly. Both the father and the youngster appear to be well-mannered and socially adept. It's not at all troublesome, but if you don't mind telling, are you facing any difficulties right now? Well, I was able to flee with my child from my abusive spouse. Daddy was a very frightening person. Even at his young age, I felt empathetic as I stated to Taylor, "That sounds tough." We first avoided sleeping outside by booking hotels, but we eventually ran out of money, which is why we ended ourselves at the food court. I apologize sincerely. You don't have to apologize all that much. People just like you have visited our department store previously. I really have a few social services leaflets. Do you want further details? My granddad saw this and gave her a pamphlet. My granddad was praised several times by Karen. I'm grateful. I had no idea that women who have experienced domestic abuse may find refuge. I believe we'll ask them for assistance initially. Thank you so much for coming, my grandfather remarked to Karen as she was ready to depart with Taylor. You passed the test, Karen, by the way. What? What topic are you discussing? Grinning, my grandfather clarified, I'm referring to a job interview. I would like to formally hire you as a full-time employee here, if that is okay with you. Me? A full-time worker? Indeed. I've seen from our conversation that you have a strong set of interpersonal skills. In addition, this department store offers daycare for your kids as well as uniforms. We would be thrilled to collaborate with you. Karen's eyes welled up with tears at my grandfather's remarks. Her voice was heavy with emotion as she continued to say thank you. 20 years later, that particular scene is still quite clear in my memory. I wanted to be a man of justice and morality, just like my grandfather. Karen started working at the department shop full-time after that day. When we originally met, she appeared exhausted, but after donning the store uniform and applying makeup, she looked completely different. Karen was a breathtakingly gorgeous woman. She adapted to her new role with ease thanks to her sophisticated manner. Her friendly customer service was highly appreciated by her clients. Karen's life started to normalize when she was employed because of her steady pay. I used to play with Taylor in the daycare where he spent his time. "Hi, Taylor." I gave him my clothes and apologized, saying, "It's just hand-me-downs, but I'm giving you some clothes." I wanted to assist Taylor's family because I heard they were still having financial difficulties. It was my mother's suggestion. In actuality, there were brand new garments among the hand-me-downs. However, I didn't tell Taylor or his family about it. "Many thanks," my mother exclaimed. "We don't have many clothes, so this helps a lot." Taylor grinned as he gave me his thanks. Taylor's mother, Karen, was equally stunning as him. Both had well-defined features and a good build. Taylor and I had a great day together, and I hope we could spend that kind of time every day. Sadly, my everyday schedule came to an end the moment I entered elementary school. My grandfather passed away 3 days after my elementary school admission ceremony. The department store as a whole was taken aback by the abrupt departure. My dad took over the department shop at first, but then something new started to happen. Nearby, a national chain store opened, and shoppers began to pour into it. Our store was going through a management change at the time, which made the timing problematic and most likely contributed to the issue. Ultimately, the department store that was having trouble was combined with the big mall. It's all my fault for not being good enough. My father expressed his profound sadness about the entire ordeal, saying, "I've really let everyone down." However, sometimes it's just misfortune. My mother and the other workers did not hold my father exclusively responsible for everything. Though it's unfortunate that my grandfather and I no longer have those memories, there are instances when accepting fate is the only option. I tried to remind myself of that all the time in an attempt to get over the death of Karen and Taylor. Karen was able to secure a full-time position at a department store in a nearby state, owing to my father's network. In her farewell remarks, Karen remarked, "I can't thank you enough for all the help and for introducing me to my new job. There is absolutely no issue. You've made a significant impact on the department store. I hope your new endeavor succeeds." I was hoping to say farewell to Taylor too, but he was not present. Taylor, who was only 7 years old at the time, didn't seem to be able to take it. It appeared that the loss of the department store, which brought back happy memories of his daycare days, had affected him. I pondered Taylor's current state of health. I kept thinking about him even throughout high school. My parents both work at different department stores at the moment. Our financial status hasn't been as pleasant as it was during my grandfather's prosperous business days. However, our family is close-knit, and we're happy with our circumstances. In paradise, I have no doubt that my grandfather would be most pleased to see us content. I am now more motivated than ever to attend school because I was nominated as the vice president of the student council in my junior year of high school. Mike, a friend of mine, remarked, "Hi, Cody. I take it that you collaborate with Miss Anderson in the student council. Could you please present her to me?" I felt uneasy when I heard the surname Anderson. I am unable to present you to President Anderson in any way. Although she may have a charming appearance, she is incredibly independent in our student council. The president was a female student named Miss Anderson. Her father is a lawyer, apparently, so she's kind of an ace. Miss Anderson always wears elegant clothing because our school permits informal attire. Her attractiveness allows her to look good in any kind of clothing. Cody, just own up to it. Aren't you just attempting to get close to Miss Anderson? Not at all. Miss Anderson doesn't seem to like me at all, not even when I try. Yes, Miss Anderson has been really strict with me. I made an attempt to start a discussion one day while we were by ourselves in the council chamber. I'm not sure what to say because I don't often chat to girls. Well, I understand now. Don't you think you have a fantastic sense of style? What? The other girls think you're great, and you're always so trendy. Are you saying I try too hard? No, I didn't mean it like that. Miss Anderson gave me a fierce gaze, anger clearly visible on her lovely face. Whatever I choose to wear, it's none of your business. Miss Anderson quickly turned aside after saying that and returned to her job. When you try to compliment someone and it is misinterpreted in that way, it can be difficult. I was awkward and didn't know how to react, so I kept working silently. Sometimes she would just look at me without saying anything, and when I questioned, "Is something wrong?" she would answer, "Nothing at all," and turn away. She interrupted me to say, "Stop talking and focus on your work," as soon as she noticed me interacting with other girls. Mike responded, "Well, Miss Anderson was chosen as the student council president, and she's pretty popular among both boys and girls," after I told him the Miss Anderson anecdote. She's not an awful person, in my opinion. It is accurate. Miss Anderson was actually described as a really sweet girl by several of her classmates. She consistently received great grades and did a fantastic job in her role on the student council. Because of her attractiveness, she was the most popular student at the school. While we were on the student council together for a year, Miss Anderson and I never seemed to get along. I wished I could have gotten closer to her. In high school, I told my teacher that I wanted to work at a department store when we were talking about our future plans. The teacher recommended college based on my grades, but I remained true to my choice because of budgetary limitations. I was the only one in my class who had completed high school and started working because my high school was a preparatory school. Yes, even Miss Anderson, I had this uneasy sense that I wouldn't see my high school friends again after today. On graduation day, let's take a group picture. Miss Anderson was surrounded by a large group of females, and they all snapped a group photo to remember the occasion. I had never seen Miss Anderson laugh so freely and merrily before. She generally seemed restrained. My heart raced for some unknown cause. I may have had affections for Miss Anderson, despite my repeated claims that I felt uneasy in her presence. Though I'm not saying I wanted to date her, I do wish our chats could have been more fruitful. I walked out of the school building after thinking that. I received an invitation to a reunion 6 years after I graduated, right as my nostalgic yet bittersweet recollections of my childhood were starting to fade. Our entire grade was invited to a reunion at a posh hotel. I was shocked to learn that Miss Anderson was one of the organizers when I looked at the invitation. Her last name hasn't changed, and it appears she's still unmarried, which surprised me because I assumed she would have gotten married by now given her beauty and wealthy upbringing. Even though I have no intention of courting Miss Anderson, I made the decision to go to the reunion. The day of the reunion then arrived. There were many more people than I had anticipated when we made our way to the hotel. One of the organizers handed me a printout with the names of all the attendees when I got there. We could read about everyone's recent lives in the parts dedicated to current status, a note to your high school self, and present career. Actually, the invitation included this questionnaire. I have heard that Miss Anderson came up with the concept to conduct this poll and provide these sheets on the designated day. Her creativity struck me as impressive. Naturally, Miss Anderson was the center of attention today as she chatted enthusiastically with many of our pupils. Elegantly clothed, she looked even more lovely than she did before. "You work at that prestigious department store. That's amazing." When inquired about her current employment, she smiled and said, "Oh, it's not a big deal." However, it's actually very difficult to land a permanent job at that prestigious department shop. Considering its lengthy history, one must possess respectable academic status and effective communication abilities. Appearance and behavior appropriate for the store's atmosphere are also crucial. Miss Anderson was presumably considered a good fit for the store and extended an offer of employment because she attended a prestigious university and had impeccable manners and looks. I kept stealing glances at Miss Anderson without her knowing as I enjoyed catching up with former classmates. Even though we both served on the student council, I was hesitant to talk to her. I reasoned that she most likely didn't want to socialize with me. But Miss Anderson surprised me by coming over. She said, "Cody, long time no see," with a straight expression, which surprised me. "On the questionnaire, you omitted the item about your present occupation. Are you not working right now?" That was not the topic I had anticipated, so I apologized a little awkwardly. Since I'll shortly be transferring employment, I purposefully kept it blank. "Do you think you can find another job with just a high school diploma?" Miss Anderson said something a little patronizing. "Actually, I'm about to become a manager at your department store," I said in a cool, collected manner. "How come?" "What do you mean?" she questioned, startled. That was the indisputable reality. I was going to be promoted from my current position to manager at the same fancy store where Miss Anderson works. The proprietor of the store extended an employment offer to me because of my good work at my current job and my ability to use my grandfather's contacts. "You mean you're going to be my boss?" she questioned in disbelief. "Yes, that is the main idea." "You're not serious." I was alert, expecting her to say anything, but she looked shocked and remained silent for the remainder of the get-together. Her demeanor perplexed me, but eventually I was hired on as a manager at the reputable department store and began working there. Although managing others was challenging at times, it was also more rewarding, and I had the good fortune to have dependable and capable staff members. Although I liked working in a posh setting, Miss Anderson was always scary and appeared far away from me. "Miss Anderson, I don't understand this part," stated Cody. Lily, a recent hire who is a woman, was interacting with me. She was a very attractive and elegant woman, and her charm was distinct from Miss Anderson's. Lily also had a kind demeanor, and many of the male staff members looked up to her. She seemed like a lovely, kind woman, but I couldn't help but feel a lack of romantic sentiments for her. "Oh, this is how you can do it." Nevertheless, I appreciated the lively exchange of messages. I thought that effective cooperation would improve the company's atmosphere even further. But for some reason, Miss Anderson would always interrupt me when I was speaking with Lily. "Hey Lily, ask me or others if you don't understand something." "Miss Anderson, whoa, manager, what's up with the yikes? You need to get on with more crucial tasks." Actually, I remember experiencing something similar in high school. While I worked for the student council, Miss Anderson would tell me to work if I spoke to another female. I wonder whether she thinks I'm letting myself go. "Miss Anderson, well, I think I need to understand what parts the new employees find difficult to understand as a manager," I said, gently calming her down. "So you won't have to worry about me too much if I ask another employee if I'm extremely busy." She didn't seem to like it, even though I was trying to say it gently. "You're acting so nice toward the female workers." After stating, "That's sexual harassment," she walked away. What's wrong with her mindset? I have the same emotions as Lily. I questioned why Miss Anderson, a normally sober woman, gets worked up over me. I questioned whether I would always be spending my time in this manner without ever being able to comprehend her, much like I did in high school. Although I was concerned about Miss Anderson, I was once invited to a drinking party at work. The first party had a somber ambience, but attendees at the second and third events were split up according to departments. I was having a third party with department members before I knew it. "Cody, please have another sip." "Oh, I'm okay." Miss Anderson was the only one who drank silently by herself and didn't talk to anyone, although Lily and nearly everyone else were heavily intoxicated. I couldn't enjoy drinking as much as I wanted to because I was worried about her as a boss. Why am I worrying so much about her, I wonder? "Lily, let's spend the evening together. You're a little too inebriated." Lily came over to me with more aggression than she usually shown, thanks to the booze. Miss Anderson started weeping out of the blue while I was pondering how to handle it. "So be. Stupid. Is Miss Anderson doing okay?" What's that? Because they were intoxicated, none of the other members, including Lily, seemed to realize that Miss Anderson was crying. I wanted to leave her there subtly so no one would know. Miss Anderson, it appears that you are not feeling well, I informed her. You can ride with me to the station. At that moment, I left the party. Since everyone was already inebriated, no one seemed to notice or care that the two of us had vanished. Miss Anderson and I went to a local park first. I reasoned that she might get quieter for a little while if we sat on a bench there. I gave her the bottle of water I had purchased, and after she took a sip, she seemed a little more at ease. Miss Anderson, what is the issue? Has anything occurred? She stared at me, tears welling up in her eyes as I asked this. It made me very upset to think that Lily might take you away from me, Cody. How come? My uncertainty further increased when I realized that Miss Anderson had called me Cody, a surprising revelation that momentarily left my thoughts blank. Miss Anderson, are you intoxicated? This isn't how I would communicate my feelings if I wasn't intoxicated. Ah, the good old days, when we just played together innocuously. I didn't know what she was discussing. You refer to your high school days. No, that was in preschool, when you and I were much younger. Oh, then it dawned on me. It dawned on me that Miss Anderson was actually Taylor. She was Taylor, but I had always called her by her last name. However, I recalled having fun with a boy. But your last name was different. Wait. Furthermore, Taylor wasn't a boy's name at the time. Since I wore hand-me-down clothes and had a short hairstyle, people assumed I was a male at the time. Particularly after Cody handed me his old guy clothes, I wanted to tell everyone that I was a girl, but it got tougher. In addition, my mom remarried, changing my last name. It was unbelievable to me that Taylor was Miss Anderson, the popular girl in school. I was momentarily stunned. Miss Anderson does, in retrospect, look a lot like Taylor's mother. It was astonishing to realize that Taylor had become such a lovely and mature woman as she grew older. She went on, tears streaming down her cheeks. Remember, I never said goodbye to you when we were little. As an adult, I can better appreciate how devastated I was when our beloved department store closed. I felt a little resentful of your parents and you. Miss Anderson, I apologize for how coldly I treated you in high school, but I know it was unavoidable. I wanted to identify myself as Taylor and step ahead, but I didn't want you to see my frail side from that time. I got dressed and concentrated on how I looked. We're back to working together, but I still can't be completely honest about how I feel. It's pitiful, which is why I lost it. I sincerely apologize. Taylor. I called her that for the first time in a very long time. She seems momentarily taken aback. I too missed my grandfather's department store, but our friendship will last a lifetime and the memories will never fade. There is always room for improvement between us. Nothing has changed. Cody Taylor grabbed me and called my name. I became aware of how much she had suffered and fought because of her fears as I gave her a hug. I wanted to appreciate her scars and everything. She was Taylor, so I suppose that's why I was drawn to her. We began dating and had a wonderful working connection from that day on. She smiled and continued, I want to become a wonderful department store manager, just like your grandpa. She was so radiant. We must have reconnected because of my grandpa's generosity. Discard the rubbish left behind by the less fortunate. Hey. I had a client at work named Scott who told me he wasn't happy with something I had made. I had just struggled to make a wedding dress. Scott tore the dress in front of me and trampled on it, even though I tried to follow his specific instructions and constantly shifting demands. His actions were nothing but dehumanizing to me, the creator. I so made the decision to exact revenge on Lisa, a classmate. I carried out a plan with my coworker's assistance and made the decision to add a finishing touch. I turned to face the intruding Scott and said, Scott, things won't go your way. I have to stop letting him get my way. Eric is my name. I'm a male in my 40s who has back discomfort a lot. I work at a place where desk jobs are common, so I'm constantly concerned that I'm not exercising enough. I am employed by a manufacturer of bridal gowns. Since many women only wear a wedding dress once, making memories for other people is the one aspect of my otherwise routine existence that makes me proud. When I'm working, I have a great sense of duty. Simultaneously, the most enjoyable aspect for me is learning about clients' preferences and painstakingly crafting every detail to suit their desires. A client was thrilled with her design the other day. I'm glad to hear that. I'm hoping for an amazing wedding for them. Observing our clients' joyful faces brings me great satisfaction in my work. I have always been interested in wedding dresses, even as a small child. I think it started when, while I was in elementary school, I received an invitation to a neighbor's sister's wedding. Her vibrant bridal gown made a lasting impression on me. When I saw a child, even as an adult, wearing a colorful dress that seemed to capture the lively spirit of an active older sister, it had a profound effect on me. I was shocked to see someone wearing a colorful dress for a wedding instead of dressing up as a different person because I had always assumed that wedding dresses were white. I questioned her. Why is your dress so colorful? Out of curiosity. Maybe because it's the most authentically me look. A wedding only occurs once in a lifetime, after all. It was unforgettable how joyfully she grinned in response to my question. That encounter made me want to grow up to meticulously design wedding gowns that fit every cuirassor precisely. Fall is upon us, and the temperature in the office drops. We're using heating appliances to change the temperature in the space. I was talking to a junior coworker in the morning just after I got to work about old times. The man next to me, a young man working on promotional posters, remarked, "It looks like a hard-working young man." James is his name, and he started working for the company this spring. James is a good man who constantly puts in a lot of effort in his work and is keen to learn from us and develop as a result. It's satisfying to teach him. I take it that you pay close attention to what the client asks for. If the client is not properly consulted, we can make a dress that fits them. It must be difficult to translate an image into an actual clothing for bespoke orders. With appreciation, the curious junior looked up and whispered, "That's impressive." He's working on promotions for now, but in the future, I might allow him to assist with bridal dress designs. Introducing him to a variety of jobs now will undoubtedly help later on. My cell phone in my chest pocket rang just as I was thinking about the future after I had completed reflecting on the past. I noticed the name of a client I was in charge of when I checked the screen. I called the client outside the premises and exited the room so as not to wake James. "You're late in getting back to me," yelled the man on the other end. The man, named Scott, was in his 30s, and he spoke in a furious tone. He is the president of a reputable corporation for the second generation. I apologize. The call had concluded in less than a minute, but the person on the other end sounded quite impatient. Scott snorted and said, "I hope the dress is ready," as I apologized. "It's constructed elegantly and simply for my partner, without any extraneous embellishments, am I correct?" He was curious about the status of my work, but this wasn't the first time he had called over this issue, so I refrained from thinking, not again. The fact that Scott calls nearly every day has made things a little overwhelming. Naturally, the work is going quite nicely. I mentally replayed Scott's plea. I took care to create it so that it wouldn't be too gaudy because he wanted it to be a dress for a demure woman. "Really, it doesn't seem like you're letting up," he queried, describing what had been finished and how far along they had come. "Where exactly are you in the process?" he said, although some people may find these types of queries bothersome. Answering them is a requirement of the job. He's understandably worried because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but he didn't seem content despite my thoughtful comments. "I have to check in every day as a client since you're unreliable. You're not able to perform your job well, most likely because you're just a high school graduate. The discussion took a turn and became an attack on my educational background. I listened silently, not sure what to say. I didn't want to drag out the conversation with pointless remarks because fighting back could result in the order being canceled, which would be bad for the business. After spending several minutes on the phone, Scott appeared content. Subsequently, he made fun of me and implied that I wasn't intelligent or well-educated because I wasn't wealthy enough to attend college. Finally, he hung up and exclaimed, "Don't think I'll accept anything." Scott spoke primarily by himself during the call, suggesting he didn't require my answers. The idea that he is a corporate president is absurd. How can one run a business when they don't listen to other people? James mentioned that perhaps this is a situation where the others are capable when we spoke about it later. Maybe the individuals in his immediate vicinity are capable, or maybe his parents are affluent enough to cover any mistakes he makes as a manager. I understand, but he's a problematic client for us. Perhaps he is widely liked in his inner circle and has a strong support system. People who are not who they seem abound throughout the world. Maybe Scott is just another one of those people, because among my pals, there's even a lady who enjoys a demanding man. In retrospect, it turns out that this was accurate, but at the time, I never thought Scott could be so bad. A few days later, I decided to go to the department store to buy a model kit for my hobby because it was my day off and I would spend the morning relaxing. It's critical to take appropriate breaks on days off in order to do high-quality work. That day, I had intended to purchase a model kit to construct, but I had no idea that I would run into someone I knew. A 40-something woman came up to me while I was going around the department store. "Is it not? Eric? Long time. No see." It was Lisa who called out to me. She used to be a high school classmate and currently owns a sizable business. "Jay, a long time has passed. We haven't really seen each other in perhaps 5 years. We live close by, but we don't get together too often. On my days off, I usually just sit around the house. After work, I'm too exhausted to want to go out. That's why once we started talking, even though it had been a few years since I last saw Lisa, we were able to have a seamless conversation. We had no trouble joking about as we strolled together. I was overcome with nostalgia as I thought back to our high school years and how we used to connect. We used to go camping in the mountains or swimming at the sea when we were in our 20s. Surely it must be the age. Isn't that a little impolite? Bringing up a woman's age in that manner. We had a great talk and decided to get lunch together. I had only had a light breakfast because we were both there, so I was considering treating myself to a substantial supper. I'm craving a hamburger. Eric, how about you? I'll also have the hamburger. It brings to mind the ones we provided food for the school festival. What a serendipitous event. It was exactly what I was thinking. I recall how our class got together to manage a hamburger stand at the school festival while we were in high school. Lisa and I took turns cooking, and we became bored tasting everything. The anecdotes from the past seemed to go on forever even as we said grace and started eating. But as the talk went on, I was taken aback by what I heard next. How come? You're tying the knot. Yes, my boyfriend is really attractive and a little younger than I am. He is the second-generation president of a developing company, not the founder. Therefore, he is somewhat used to adversity. All right, congrats. My friend received my heartfelt congrats. I was relieved to learn she had found a decent partner because I had been wondering why someone so kind as her hadn't gotten married yet. Knowing that her lifelong desire to get married was finally being fulfilled made her heart sing. I want you to marry me, even if all you do is sit around at home, he said in his proposal. Do you not believe he's a fantastic guy? Is he a saint of some sort? Her spouse appeared to be completely enamored with Lisa. It seems like you wouldn't say anything like, you don't have to do anything unless you truly like someone. He's just an everyday guy. Scott Jameson is the man's name. That name sounds normal. doesn't it? Although the name is not remarkable, something about it seemed familiar. In my current position, I had a client with the same name. Even though name sharing is uncommon, this particular coincidence struck me as noteworthy. No, I recall that Scott, my cursor, asked for a dress that was both lovely and modest. It doesn't seem to fit Lisa, who is direct and intelligent, so they must be separate persons. I'll send you an invitation. We're planning the wedding in 3 months. Many thanks. I'll bring a lovely gift. I'm grateful. However, Lisa's smile soon vanished, revealing a trace of worry. What's not right? Is there something causing you trouble? He seems to be highly focused on his educational history, which is a bit odd to say. Explain what you mean. According to Lisa, Scott, also known as Scott Jameson, is strict with those who dropped out of middle or high school. It seems that he expresses his desire to avoid interacting with individuals who have not completed their college education. The talk took a bad turn, and I scowled. Naturally, I think that's a bad way to think, but may I ask if it's all right if I do? Although at first I believed Scott to be a good man, he appeared to have problems. What makes Lisa want to wed someone like that? She said, a little hesitantly. He knows it's an unfair prejudice, seeing my reaction. I think I have to trust him because he's making an effort to improve as our partner. Scott was thus presently attempting to overcome his prejudices. I couldn't express how stunned I was by that. I'm only Lisa's classmate, so my thoughts wouldn't help but might even get in the way. I hope their divergent moral philosophies won't cause them to split up. From now on, you will be with him. Apply as much pressure as necessary, your love, to help him get better. Obviously, we need to collaborate because we plan to get married. Over lunch, we carried on chatting about our high school years before parting ways. My phone rang a few days later while I was hard at work in the office. The dress was now in the sewing stage, but he began calling several times a day, maybe out of worry for the status of the project. It was impeding my job, so I wished he would quit, but he would not listen. I sighed and turned to check my phone, only to see that Lisa had called. This is uncommon because she doesn't usually call me throughout the workday. She usually calls me in the evenings or on vacations, asking if something went wrong, but this time I left the office to answer her call. "Hello, is this Eric?" I exclaimed as I made my way outside. "What's going on, Lisa? You don't usually call at this hour." Though it's difficult to say, I felt compelled to inform you. Lisa sounded depressed, not like she did when we met. For me, what she said at the beginning was actually unexpected. First of all, it turned out that my cursor Scott and her fiancé Scott were one and the same, but that was the least of my worries. I couldn't even speak after hearing the more startling information. Is that accurate? Yes, I apologize. No, you are not at blame. All of it is Scott's fault. I put my head in my hands and imagined Derek's face, feeling bad for my classmate who apologized softly. Let's consider our next course of action. Okay, I'll give you a call back after work. Apologies. Like me, Eric, Scott is a wedding dress designer who appears to be producing problems for our business. I can't let him be alone. I had recently finished a wedding dress I had been working on, and I had made arrangements for my cursor Scott to come look it over. Scott appeared agitated the entire time he was at the company, and Lisa, who accompanied him, felt uneasy. I had never met her before at this company. She must have taken the day off, even though it's a weekday, specifically for this. I showed Scott and Lisa the bridal gown that James and I had placed on a mannequin. As asked, it's a straightforward piece with few ornamentation. I took off the dress's cover and gave it to James. As he is not involved in what follows, he is a junior colleague who was invited for educational purposes. I made him wait in silence in a room corner. This is the wedding dress you requested. I turned back to Scott and his group and started to go over the details of the completed wedding dress. I started to explain the adjustments that were made during the design process in detail, but I was interrupted. That's enough. I made every effort to live up to Derek's expectations. On multiple occasions, I had provided him the design forecasts and shown him pictures of the dress as it was being made. It should not have come as a complete surprise because we have repeatedly confirmed it. Everything would have ended amicably if they had been satisfied. However, that was untrue. What a horrible bridal gown. It's not at all like the picture I painted. Lisa cannot wear something like this. Scott began berating the bridal dress in front of him, claiming that the materials were subpar and the design was poorly done. It may not fit Lisa's personality, but the current design was just what he requested. I tailored it according to your order, but it didn't meet your expectations. Obviously not. Such a simple dress will seem unappealing on our important day. It doesn't fit Lisa's intelligent demeanor. I was unsure of how to respond after hearing him say that all prior requests were invalid. Even though I've lived long enough to see a lot, I had never met someone so irrational before. James was there, and his lips was as open as mine. From the corner of the room, he said to himself, "What's going on in that guy's head?" Be kind with yourself, Scott. Someone put a lot of effort into this. Although Lisa is being kind, effort is insufficient on its own. It's worthless business without any results. He was correct, of course, but I didn't want to hear it from him. Scott appeared to have a soft spot for Lisa despite his hostile demeanor, hurriedly offering her numerous words of comfort. "Eric, what should we do? It's obvious as day that this circumstance will not satisfy him. I transcribed some of our talks in case something similar occurred. Should I carry it with me? Well, what should we do?" Scott turned to face us, scowling, and said in a childlike tone as he heard us talking. Scott had just finished consoling Lisa. "I placed this order. I'll accept that because I paid for it." "So you're going to use this dress for the wedding?" Lisa inquired, looking perplexed when she heard this and realized what was being said. Scott shook his head and parted his lips when he saw Lisa's confused expression. "Obviously not. I won't allow you to wear something that awful." In addition, he paused in the middle of his statement and looked down on us as he went on. "The individual in front of us is a recent high school graduate who is aware of the potential issues that could result from a product created by someone with such a low level of education. It is untrustworthy." I was wondering what Scott was going to do with the garment he had paid for when he reached into his pocket and took the scissors, which he had conveniently brought with him, and tore the dress off the mannequin. "Throw away this trash made by the less fortunate," he scoffed as he looked at us. And when he was leaving the room, he walked on the pieces of the bridal dress that were lying on the floor. Lisa was apologizing, appearing pale, but I was too shocked to absorb what she was saying. Thankfully, he didn't decline to pay at least. My pride as a designer was crushed, even if it was a comfort that the company was not negatively impacted. But it seems that Scott, who had already damaged my soul, had plans to torture me even more. He supposedly tried to write negative reviews of my business online that evening. Who knows what would have occurred if Lisa hadn't found it and halted it. She remained at Scott's house to keep an eye on his behavior, which stopped the incident. She emailed me the news 1 hour after work finished. Later that evening, I found out that Lisa and Scott had a horrible fight. Luckily, we were spared any harm because Lisa had threatened to not marry you if you post bad things online. But I wasn't going to sit back and take it all in. I purposely expressed my emotions in order to fortify my commitment. "Scott, things won't go your way." Luckily, I had anticipated Scott's scheme and was ready to get revenge. Scott may not have revealed such plans if he hadn't acted dishonestly today. With Lisa's information, I made contact with a number of businesses. These were tiny manufacturers of fabrics and threads that Scott's company had intimidated or coerced. My strategy was to get these businesses to work with our organization instead of Scott and to cease doing business with him. Even though I didn't press them, they all nodded rapidly, suggesting that their relationship with Scott was already strained. Scott's company started to delay the creation of bridal dresses after that day. Lisa claims that because of the complaints from cuirassiers, Scott was getting more and more worn out. Then, a disheveled Scott burst into our company the day before the wedding. You've recently communicated with the businesses we work with. I've been informed about it. Now please stop bothering us. What topic are you discussing? I have only transacted with businesses that are required to make dresses. It is merely a coincidence that it was your company's. Please stop lying so openly. I know what you're planning. If you continue to act in such manner, we will disseminate negative feedback about you. With a flushed face and a wheezing temper, Scott spoke up. But would Lisa consent to that? Your fiancé will be upset if you do that. I promise not to hold it against her if she calls off the engagement. I refuted those words in my heart, silently. Lisa will understand me. Lisa is not the type of person that supports everyone in everything they do. She was always critical of others' errors, whether they were made by a close friend or a supervisor, in my memory. I sighed when I saw Lisa pull in. So, Lisa, what brings you here? This is what I was expecting. I can somewhat imagine your actions as your fiancé. She shot me a quick look of regret and turned to face Scott. Scott, disparaging other businesses in order to further your own is not acceptable. What topic are you discussing? You're not going to last with that level of ignorance. I know that society is harsh, but that doesn't mean that harming people is acceptable. Scott paled and turned away from Lisa, giving me a frown instead. You've enchanted Lisa. How dare you touch the woman of another man? He is not involved in this at all. As my fiancé, this is my choice. Do you not realize that? No, Lisa's assertiveness is pressing that. At this, Scott went white and started to perspire. Lisa murmured, "We can't be together anymore," and appeared to take in the fact that she was in the room where the bridal gown was on display. Her eyes lowered to the ground, where bits of Scott's torn garment lay in a scattered heap. "Let's split up," she declared. Scott heard this and grabbed Lisa's shoulder while spitting profusely. "Please refrain from. Consider it carefully. Ericoro is the wedding day. I cherish you. Affection? Most likely, that is a falsehood. I have some time to know it. What, you just choose to target my company because it creates superior supplies with which to cultivate your own? You have never shown me affection. Scott must have targeted Lisa's company because it is renowned for creating high-quality thread, and he may have been successful. When you were intoxicated, I overheard you chatting to yourself. When Scott heard Lisa's dejected remarks, he instantly passed out. Up until today, everything was going smoothly. This is a farce. Where did I make a mistake? Scott turned out to be even more reprehensible than I had thought. He did not apologize. The idea that a business run by a high school graduate has a greater reputation than mine is absurd. I believed that a few negative reviews would attract business. His look was regretful, his jaws gritted in rage. My scheme to eliminate a competitor and acquire a handy woman was a complete failure. Rather than acknowledge his own responsibility, Scott went on the defense, even scolding Lisa. Oh no. I never should have selected a woman such as yourself. I would have preferred a younger, more submissive wife, but you were the only one who was knave enough to give me what I wanted. It hurt to see Scott treat the lady who had been his fiancée up until this point with such disdain. I was unable to let this continue any farther, so I seized Scott by the collar. You should and shouldn't mention certain things. Express your regret to her. What is the apology for? I'm getting married to an old maid, so you should be happy. You ought to have just remained silent. I wanted to attack him because I couldn't resist, but Lisa stopped me in my tracks and smacked him across the face instead. You're in luck since you don't have to wed a woman like that. I'm sorry, and please never again reveal your face to me. Scott departed her company murmuring complaints and sporting a swollen cheek. I requested James to play a little prank on me, and a few seconds later, there was a big splash. I had requested him to set up a bucket of water in a spot where, had Scott spotted and avoided it, he would have probably kicked it over. It wasn't necessary for James to empty another pail of water from the floor above. Lisa, left behind, looked resolute as she began making phone calls rather than displaying shock. "Hello? We've made the decision to stop doing business in relation to the contract we had. I'll go into more detail later. Kindly give my regards to Scott." She appeared to be phoning her ex-fiance's business. Lisa turned to me when her calls were over and gave me a quick peck on the cheek to lift her spirits. "I've decided to cancel the contract with Scott's company," the woman declared. "Since it was a big deal, it ought to have a big effect on them." I regret not being able to see his irate expression. "You're strong," I remarked. "It serves no use to laze around. That isn't who I am. So how about we go out to bars tonight to celebrate my ongoing single status?" I gave her a shrug and gladly accepted her invitation. Lisa and I had many stories to tell over cocktails at a tavern that evening. She smiled at me and replied, "Thank you," which gave me hope that she was beginning to get over her recent breakup. Following that, Scott's business lost a lot of business, particularly because crossing Lisa appeared to have a big effect. After losing a significant business partner, Scott's company began to shrink and ultimately filed for bankruptcy. I didn't see Scott again for a while after that incident, but a few years later, I happened to encounter him in a little spinning mill. He appeared so thin that he seemed like a whole other person. As a kind of compensation for the inconvenience, Lisa promoted us, and as a result, our business continued to perform well. Wedding dress orders increased threefold. We had trouble for a while managing the workload with our tiny crew, but we were able to get over this by adding more employees. After a few years, our business had gained local recognition. After enduring a significant tragedy, Lisa eventually had a flawless wedding ceremony. I was relieved that it appeared she had moved on from Scott. I will be there to support her if she ever remembers him. Ultimately, I found myself standing next to her as her partner at the wedding location. Lisa looked breathtakingly gorgeous in the Zurich-made wedding gown I designed for her. She smiled at me brightly, the kind of smile I used to remember seeing on a neighborhood girl. I hadn't seen my former spouse in 4 years. She entered the cafe as stunning as ever and unchanged. She looked at me when she sat down and told me why she had come to visit me today. I had no idea what to say. Ultimately, I never would have guessed that this would occur. "Please, there may still be hope. Would you please give it another go?" Her statements, implying that we still could have time, struck a profound chord with me. Really, could we make it in time? I was unsure if it would be effective to try again. But I'd always felt bad about leaving my ex-wife because I couldn't relate to her emotions. If I pushed her away right now, I knew I would regret it. All right, let's try it out together. And so, for the two of us, the clock began to run again. Kevin is my name. I'm 28 years old. Since completing my degree, I have been employed in a securities firm. University. This is a high-level finance position. At first, the strain was so intense that I believed concerning giving up repeatedly. But I couldn't stop doubting myself and wondered if this was all I was capable of. Much and inexplicably continued. I've now reached the status of ace in the company at the age of 28. After I had progressed thus far, my goals for my career keep expanding. I desire to raise my game even more and achieve elevated. I wanted to show everyone that I'm more capable than they realize. Even if I was not at work, I started to consider it. My time with Hannah, the woman I married at the age of 26, was progressively dwindling. Hannah, a stay-at-home mom, did all of the housework flawlessly, offering well-balanced dinners. She made a fantastic wife. We had been friends for over 20 years, dating back to our early school years. Her dad worked as a generous person in my life. At a nearby gym, Hannah's father used to instruct kids in martial arts. I possessed. Since I was in elementary school, I had been going there. When I was in the 3rd grade, my own father passed away. My parents had grown apart from us. Family. So after that, it was only my mother and me. Yet, because of the frequent bed rest, my mother. Shock of my father's passing. I had no family to turn to when I was younger, so I didn't know. Feel totally bewildered and unsure of what to do. That is when George, Hannah's father, stepped in to save the day. George was defeated, separating from his wife and parenting Hannah alone. He knew that perhaps it was the reason. How the recently single mother of mine would be experiencing. He gave me an explanation of this, in a kind tone. Through his calls to the insurance provider, my mother's work, and even asking them to assist with some administrative tasks with the staff at the municipal office. He also took me in and allowed me to stay at his house on a few occasions. Regards, George. Taking over, my mom was able to heal by taking it easy. Hannah no longer identified as the instructor's daughter at that point. Hannah. And I started to think of George as family. When I went to George as an adult and informed him that I was ecstatic to want to marry Hannah. Kevin, you've always been regarded as my son. I'm overjoyed that you will always be my son. Right now. I doubt I'll ever forget the look on his face when he told me this. My donor was meant to have blessed me with a blissful marriage, but I ended up separating from Hannah. I was entirely to blame. Hannah always worried about my well-being and made an effort to treasure our time spent together. Are you okay? Would you please take a break? The next time, how about we go to a spa together? Let's unwind, she would remark. When we first got married, I believed that we were kind childhood friends, but I eventually discovered Hannah's concern for me irritates me. I had such a strong desire to be successful at work that I was assuming too much from her generosity. Stop talking. You could not comprehend. For me, this is a critical moment. Please don't disturb me. I reiterated. Such items. I would not have noticed if Hannah had not appeared hurt. I hadn't really looked at Hannah in a while because I was always being critical of her. Remarks directed to her. Hannah then told me one day, I want to spend this weekend with you. Today is a significant day. Please leave early and return home. It's about time we had a conversation about Dad. Could I elaborate for you? Then, I'll have it. I'm going home early. I just said, got it, without checking to see what she meant when she said it was important. At that point, day, or inquiring as to George's whereabouts. I guess I had formed a negative habit of heedlessly answering Hannah's remarks. So I answered Hannah nonchalantly, as I usually did. As it happened, I neglected to keep my word and worked extra hours over the weekend. I simply wrote Hannah one message, saying, working late, not in the mood for dinner. I had entirely forgotten about the pledge, so I didn't even bring it up. Usually Hannah responds immediately, but not this time. That didn't concern me either. My entire attention was on the task in hand. Hannah was gone when I got back home after midnight. A brief message and finalized divorce documentation were discovered abandoned. I wanted more family time, but your job is your important thing, the note said. I hope your work goes well. Kindly attend to your health. After reading it, I at last recalled my commitment to Hannah. I saw that it was my birthday when I looked at the calendar. Hannah believed that my birthday was an important day, not our anniversary or Hannah's own birthday. Although Hannah was born a month ahead of me, I don't recall ever having a birthday celebration. Hannah was going to honor a spouse whose wife's birthday he was unable to even recall. Surveying the house, Hannah's possessions were nowhere to be found. She moved everything out in one day, which surprised me. Maybe Hannah had been expecting me to break the pledge and had been progressively removing her items from the house, but I was completely unaware of this. Hannah had already left with her belongings before I realized what had happened. Hannah made no alimony requests. She must have had a difficult marriage. Hannah made no demands of me, but I think she had the right to ask for it. Rather, she departed from the house and left me a message containing words of worry. I was unable to pursue Hannah. The following day, I filed the divorce documents that I had completed. Ultimately, I was unable to hear what George intended to say, the conversation Hannah had brought up. I spoke with George on the phone about the divorce. I was too scared to confront him. I said I was sorry for not looking after Hannah. George only answered, "I understand," without seeming upset or dejected. We didn't talk again after the call ended. I instantly lost both my donor and my wife as a result of my self-centered acts. I was in pieces following the divorce. I lost all motivation, began to skip work, and ultimately quit. Since work had taken up all of my life, I was left with nothing. I made a few attempts to find employment, but I never lasted very long since I would often miss work. I'm currently barely scraping by on day labor. This is how I've been living for the past 4 years. It's my 32nd birthday. I'm waiting for Hannah at a coffee shop right now. A few days ago, Hannah gave me a call. She said, "There's someone I want you to meet." I understand that you are wondering, what is she saying, the one who handed over the divorce papers? But no, the divorce is entirely my fault. "Hannah, you did nothing wrong," I replied. "That is untrue, Mill. Could we just get together once?" "I really want you to meet this person," she said. "Do you want me to meet someone I'm acquainted with?" You know him, but also you don't. Despite not knowing what she meant, I went to meet him. I've always wanted to give Hannah my sincere apologies. This could be my last opportunity. The coffee shop's antique entrance chime tolled. Hannah and her father, George, were there as I turned to face the entryway. I waved a little to Hannah, and she approached. George was the person Mom wished for me to meet. As she mentioned, you know them, but also you don't. I was interested to discover what kind of person he would be. Hannah continued to have an exquisite appearance. It was a far cry from how exhausted I've grown over the last 4 years. "Kevin, a long time has passed. It appears that you have shed some pounds. Are you occupied at work?" "I know. I quit my old job." "What?" "Yes, I understand." Hannah graciously did not inquire further after learning that I had resigned from my work, as though she had an inkling as to what was going on. "Miss, who is this gentleman over here?" I was momentarily unable to identify the speaker. George was the only person in front of me, but even though we've known each other since we were young, there's no way he could have forgotten to address Hannah as Miss and me as this gentleman. He's not the type to purposefully say things in the incorrect way in public. That's why I couldn't figure it out. "My dad, you see, he has dementia," Hannah remarked as she looked down, her eyes saddening. "Dementia. About course, I had heard about it before, but I didn't really get it until then." However, I sensed that George was not quite right. His smile never left his face. Although he was constantly happy, he had a respectable demeanor in the past. He simply appears to be a cheerful old man these days, always smiling. In actuality, I had been observing that he was growing increasingly forgetful even prior to the divorce. Gradually, after the divorce, dementia symptoms started to show. "Sometimes he doesn't recognize me the way he used to," Hannah said, sighing. Thus, there were indications prior to the divorce. I was unable to contain my dismay at my benefactor's transformation. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted to, but work kept you extremely busy. I had assumed that we could have a casual conversation about it at a birthday party or something." "Correct. We didn't have enough time to talk, which was my mistake. I'm sorry you had to move out your stuff bit by bit, didn't you?" "Yes, I apologize. I was unable to totally rely on you. Piece by piece, I started packing my stuff into a storage container. If you followed through on your promises, I believe I could return home. However, you didn't. After the divorce, I relocated my belongings from the storage container to a studio apartment because you seldom came home early. If only I had fulfilled my word, maybe Hannah, and I would still be a family. I felt horrible for losing something so priceless. I really apologize for those moments. I lost motivation after the divorce and left my job. Work used to seem like everything to me. Hannah, I wasn't really listening to you. Now it's all right. As a housewife, I've also been holding back and not expressing my emotions. I ought to have come to you with my demands and grievances. When we were younger, we used to say anything to each other. When did we stop communicating with one another, I wonder. The words of Hannah struck my heart. After growing up as friends, we were married to one another. Despite our long-standing friendship, nothing worked out. I shouldn't have taken communication for granted just because we were married and childhood friends. I felt a great deal of guilt and regret. Then there was an abrupt stop. Kevin and Hannah, should we head to the gym? George quickly offered. I've got some candies for you too. I've been smiling softly. Hannah was surprised and quickly told me, You see, Dad, his memory isn't always consistent. He occasionally remembers and occasionally forgets, but recently, he started recalling your name, Kevin, and a lot of our early stories. Because of his dementia, he frequently becomes irate, agrees, and has tantrums when gazing at photo albums. But he's very at ease when he thinks of you, Kevin. Oh, is that why you wanted me to meet him today? Hannah nodded at what I said. My dad's heart is deteriorating. He has made frequent trips to and from the hospital. They'll be admitted to a dementia-focused hospital when a spot opens up, but I won't be able to see him as frequently as I do now. So, why don't you speak with him with me till he checks into the hospital? While he is still able to remember, I want to let him peacefully savor his memories. Hannah had proposed suddenly, and I had run out of things to say. However, Hannah requested it, and more significantly, I wanted to do everything in my power to let George, my benefactor, comfortably relive his memories. What about Kevin and Hannah, then? Are you guys going outside to play once more? George remarked, unable to recognize Hannah and me in front of him. You two are always full of energy. However, he exuded happiness as he spoke about our early years. Please, there may still be some time left. I apologize for any inconvenience the divorce may have given you. There's nothing I can do to help him. I want to help my father now because of this. What exactly should I do? I inquired. Why don't we get together again and have this kind of tea? We might occasionally visit the gym. Dad might be pleased if we take him to elementary school because he frequently mentions that he needs to pick up Hannah and Kevin. We really weren't a nice married couple, but as children, we were closer to one another. When the three of us were spending time together, I wanted to bring those moments back. If we do that, I believe Dad will remember more. I want him to cherish his experiences. Hannah sounded quite earnest. Would I be able to pull it off? I didn't love Hannah enough. I really am a loser. I sincerely hope that I won't tarnish George's memory. Let's attempt to recall our childhood emotions. We were certainly attentive of one another. Should we give it another go? My heart was made at Hannah's words. I made the most of my time with Hannah and George for the next 6 months, until a room in a specialized dementia facility became available. George would sometimes lose his temper or become delirious, but he would always remain calm when we would open the picture album or when Hannah and I would go to the locations from our recollections. Though it didn't really matter, there were moments when he appeared to recognize us and moments when he didn't. It was sufficient for George to be able to savor his memories. Compared to when we were married, Hannah and I spoke a lot more. We chuckle now at how odd it seems that we weren't this talkative when we were married. George was admitted to a specialist dementia facility in Arizona 6 months after I began visiting George and Hannah. Due to his weak heart, the hospital located outside of our state was the only choice. Though certainly not as regularly as we used to, we could still visit him. The employees of the facility came to pick him up in their vehicle on the day of his departure. Hannah was crying, but George was smiling, not quite realizing what was happening. She screamed out, "Dad, take care," but George only grinned silently. But after he entered the vehicle and the attendant pulled down the window, George observed Hannah and me and remarked, "You two take good care of each other." He said those exact words to us right after our marriage. We were unable to determine if he recognized us or just remembered the wedding. However, Hannah and I responded as a team, "We will," just as we had at the wedding. We said our goodbyes with a wave till the George carrying vehicle was out of sight. George was admitted to the hospital 1 month ago. There has been oscillation in his state. Next week, we're going to see George together. Hannah and I have been getting together a lot since then. Although we probably feel the same way about one another, that doesn't imply we're ready to be married again right now. We wish to avoid making the same errors twice. We don't have to get married in order to be together. We're trying to figure out how to take care of one another and stay together. We're not sure if that's as a married couple or as a couple, but Hannah looks happier today than she did when we were married. I want to prolong this joy for as long as I can. You work-wearers constantly bring in nothing but soiled pennies. I take it that you're just a lethargic jerk meandering around in the middle of the day to make yourself wait until the end. You poor loser, you should be thankful that we're even processing your things. Scum, just wait and sit quietly. The bank clerk uttered those things to me and looked at me like he spotted something filthy. In a haste, I had left my job at a construction site and gone to the bank street still wearing my work clothes. But it's been more than 3 hours since I arrived to the bank. My turn never seems to come, even though people who arrived after me have been called up one after another. Is it possible that my work clothing are causing me to get pushed to the back of the line? Although it's common for people to make snap judgments about others based just on their appearance, isn't that quite another matter entirely? Branch manager Mr. Smith emerged from the back room as I was ready to reply. My goodness. The man who had been watching me with disdain till now opened his eyes in astonishment when Mr. Smith bowed courteously to me. "Oh, who is this person?" "You mean you don't know?" Mr. Smith's face became pale as he told the bank clerk who I was. "I'm 21-year-old Scott Anderson. When I was younger, I can still recall feeling hollow whenever my classmates talked about their aspirations for the future. Though their paths had already been predetermined, they were full of hope and wanted to pursue their passions. My classmates who openly shared their aspirations, stating that they wanted to be this or achieve that, made me jealous. Not that I had a dream in particular, but I detested not being free to follow my own course. In addition, my dad was obstinate and possessing a craftsman-like quality. He yelled, "You fool," when I joked that I wanted to work for the company on a daily basis. "You are a member of our family. Recognize your location." It felt so boring, having everything planned out for me. The individuals who talked about dreams around me and my parents, who imposed their ambitions on me, were aspects of that life that I detested. I thus began to have a difficult life. My parents' remarks had grown aggravating by the time I was in high school, and I turned to fighting as a release valve for my annoyance. I started to get treated like a ticking time bomb by people, and occasionally I even got into difficulty with the law. My parents would sternly chastise me every time I was called in, which would make me resist and feed a vicious cycle of resentment and hatred. Our family dynamic deteriorated at that time as my parents began to argue more and wondered why they had failed in their parenting of me. My grandparents lived nearby, and since I detested being at home, I frequently crashed at their place. I used to spend most of my childhood days there while my parents were at work. I used to hang out with Grandma after school, and we would have dinner together when Grandpa got home. Before leaving for home, I would frequently complete my homework there and take a bath with Grandpa. Perhaps for that reason, I will always harbor affection for my grandparents. Above all, they didn't bug me as much as my parents did. They treated me like their cherished grandson, Scott, even when I started to look scruffy. Grandpa would say, "Scott is a good boy," as if that were his slogan, and Grandma was always kind. What's so good about me? They would merely give me a friendly grin even after I bluntly and shamefully voiced such. No matter how wild I got, I never crossed a line into truly horrible behavior, and I believe that's because of them. I thought about moving in with them when I graduated from high school to help them out. If it meant helping my grandparents, I even started to consider becoming a caregiver. Then one day, as usual, my phone began vibrating in my pocket as I was hanging out with my pals in an alley. I initially believed it to be a message, but as the vibration persisted, I understood it to be a call. I looked at the screen out of frustration, and Grandma's name was there. Grandma had trouble using computers and would frequently ask for help with even the slightest tasks, like typing a message. I took my time answering the phone, assuming she was asking me to pick up something. "Hello, Grandma. What's for dinner tonight?" On the other end of the call, Grandma sounded terrified, in stark contrast to my relaxed tone. Her voice was so crazy, I had never heard her so calm and gentle before. She said, in response to my question about what was wrong, "Grandpa has collapsed." Grandma gave me the hospital's name and hung up, claiming she had to call someone else. I was stunned and speechless. I had no idea what the heck was going on. Had Grandpa fallen apart? When my disoriented brain eventually processed the circumstances, I bounded off from my current location. Since I was a student at the time, I never even considered using a taxi. I just ran through the streets, panting and soaked with perspiration, giving it everything I had. And last, I arrived in the hospital room. A chill went down my spine the instant I saw Grandpa laying there in the bed, feeble and lifeless. Even from a distance, it was obvious that his normally vibrant and humorous face appeared pale and unwell. He had many tubes strapped to every part of his body, and his throat wheezed with each breath. "Grandpa." He flashed me a feeble smile as I hurried to his bedside. "Oh, Scott." He attempted to raise his hand, but it hardly moved before tumbling weakly back into the bed. I held both of his hands tenderly. Grandpa's hand quivered a little, but he did not reclaim the grip. "Don't look so sad, Scott." "Grandpa, please don't." I couldn't bring myself to say, "Please don't go." "Scott, what a kind boy you are." "My delight and pride," Grandpa remarked, grinning broadly. I shook my head, though. I was a disappointing grandchild, not a good boy. "Do as you please with your life. Treasure it." I had no words to reply to what Grandpa had said. Later, Grandpa had already gone into a coma when my parents hurried to the hospital. I went to see him every day, but every day he got weaker. He had worked as a carpenter, so his arms had once been strong, but now they were as thin as twigs. I prayed to God, something I had never done before, while holding his wrinkly hand. "Please, just please, let Grandpa heal. I swear that I will never longer pick battles. I'll return home. I promise to be a good boy. Grandpa deserves my entire happiness, so please, God, keep him safe." However, my prayers were answered, and Grandpa died peacefully. It was only after his retirement that I found out about his cardiac issues. He was becoming older, his health had gotten worse, and he finally went away quietly. My parents, Grandma, and I shed many tears. Grandpa was extremely loved by all of us, and we were all devastated by his passing. It was difficult for me to go to Grandpa's house after the funeral. It hurt because I would have to face the fact that Dad was really gone if I went there. I was floating through life without purpose and without motivation one day when Grandma called. and I went to their house for the first time in a very long time. I was unfamiliar with the new altar that had appeared in the living room. Grandma pulled out some work clothes and gave them to me. I found a brand new uniform with the name Anderson stitched on the chest when I unwrapped them. In addition, my dad's construction company wore this attire. My dad was the sole founder of the company, which Grandpa created. I detested it and had always struggled against Dad's continual insistence that I take control. Grandpa had often reassured me, "Scott, you don't have to take over," when he saw my resistance. "Follow your desires." But Grandma gazed at the picture on the altar with longing. In the hopes that I would wear it someday, he prepared it in secret. Though he knew I didn't want to take over, he had nonetheless quietly made the preparation shopping that I would eventually wear the same outfit. Grandpa had a bright, pleased smile on his face and was dressed in his work clothes in the memorial portrait. He appeared really cool and proud. "Grandma, I have decided. I'm going to turn into a stylish craftsman who fits well in these outfits." I made the decision to quit running away from having my life dictated to me and to stop making excuses. I wanted to follow up with Dad and Grandpa because I knew they both took tremendous pride in this work. I chose to work at the family construction company after having that thought. I let my blonde hair grow out and shaped it off as soon as I came home. Grasping the labor clothing Grandpa had laid out, I asked Dad straight, "Please let me work." I stated something out of the blue, shocking both my parents because I had been rebelling all along. I told Dad what I really wanted to do, how I felt about taking over the construction company, and about the work clothing Grandpa had given me. But Dad was never going to agree to it. I kept pleading with him to let me work even after he refused, since I knew it wouldn't be easy. I vowed today that I would not stop asking till tomorrow and the day after until I was finally accepted. I pondered the duration of the back and forth. Dad finally sighed and said, "You'll start by getting to know the site," and I bowed profoundly. I started working at the construction company the following day, as my father had instructed. I worked at the construction site for my first job. Obviously, without any particular abilities, loading materials was the majority of my responsibilities. I was viewed like a burden at first because I wasn't helpful at all, and news quickly got around that I was the CEO's son. I received daily reprimands for being a bothersome employee from the senior staff due to the rigid structure. To be really honest, there were moments when I wanted to give up because things were difficult, but I forced myself to hold on every time I saw Grandpa's face. I attempted to study as much as I could and did everything I could. I was progressively given more responsibilities as those days went on, and the more experienced employees started to notice me. At last, the day of my very first paycheck came. I had never worked part-time jobs before, so I was a little excited. My father made fun of me and said, "Don't expect too much. It's not a big amount." But that was more than sufficient for me. I had promised Grandma that I would take her out to supper, and I wanted to tell Grandpa that I had received my first salary. Fortunately, I had an early shift that day and was allowed to leave before noon, so I made my way straight to the bank. With plenty of time before my scheduled supper with Grandma, I made the decision to give her a surprise gift. I made the decision to go to the bank and withdraw my paycheck before heading home to change clothes so that it would be out of the way. The bank's ATMs and counters were packed because it was payday. Although there was a long line outside for the ATMs, I chose to take a number and wait as it appeared like I could wait at the desk. There weren't many people in line in front of me, and it was shortly after lunch. I had assumed that I could return home and leave in an hour or so. I waited to be called while using my phone in an empty seat. I kept myself busy by scrolling through social media and responding to messages, but my phone was not ringing. They were ringing numbers that came after mine, but the last time I looked, there were only 2 people ahead of me. I went over to a man who was working at the corner of the counter, wondering whether I had missed my turn somehow. "Excuse me, sorry to bother you. I think I might have missed my number." I showed him my slip of numbers. The man gave me a quick glance before quickly erasing his smile. After a brief phone check, he remarked dismissively, "We're calling numbers in order." "But my number has already passed," I replied. "Should I just keep waiting?" I asked since I didn't know how the bank counters operated. However, the man's sigh was tinged with frustration. He dropped his gaze back to the documents in front of him and stated, "The order of processing may change depending on the transaction details, so please wait at your seat." I had to look at his name tag since I was getting annoyed with his attitude. His chest was adorned with a plaque that said, "Stanley Kelly." It was payday, so I could understand why it was busy, but this kind of blatant behavior really got to me. I chose to wait a little while longer, hoping that I wouldn't have to deal with Stanley. I followed the instructions, and almost 10 numbers after mine had already been called, even though they claimed the order could alter. I had expected to hear from them shortly, but instead I was getting calls one by one from people who had received their number tickets after I had begun to wait. I opted to question the lobby receptionist since I hadn't heard back from Stanley in more than half an hour. The receptionist stepped behind the counter and said they would check. I had not been here for more than 2 hours. When the receptionist came back, I wouldn't have time to buy the gift I was considering if I didn't leave quickly and get ready. He bowed pitifully and stated, "We are currently very busy and ask for your patience to wait a little longer." I could have waited a little bit longer because of their courteous demeanor, in contrast to Stanley. I took a seat again and bided my time. Ultimately, though, I didn't get a call until the bank closed at 3:00 p.m. Only those who were waiting to be called stayed after the new reception was closed. I was treated as if I didn't exist even though no one else was in line for deposit withdrawals. It was unusual to have to wait 3 hours while the order was continually changing. There was still a long line outside the ATM, even though I should have just gone to the ATM. I went back to Stanley, reluctant to start over there. "I apologize. I've been waiting for the past 3 hours. Will you be giving me a call soon? I believe it was you who instructed me to wait at my seat." I inquired. Stanley laughed mockingly and snorted. "Probably simply a little change exchange, am I correct? It's inconvenient and bothersome during this hectic time." His tone had abruptly turned disdainful, and I was astonished. "You work-wearing people always bring in filthy change. You can wait till the very end, you lazy bastards who like to meander around in the middle of the day. You poor fool, you should be thankful that we're even processing your things. You filth, just wait there silently. You bastard, what did you say?" I yanked Stanley by the collar in a furious manner, and he gave a pitiful little cry. I nearly pumped my fist, but just then, Grandpa's face shot into my head. "Scott is a decent boy." I dropped my fist in surprise. I apologized and let Stanley go. Stanley irritably cleared his throat. "This is the reason I detest working with the lowest rung. They are so barbaric. Oh, how annoying it is to lose all reason and get emotional at any time. Not to mention, there was no money. What a catastrophe. Talking to someone who denigrated me like Stanley was useless. Probably aroused by the earlier disturbance, a man in a suit swiftly approached from behind the counter as I was considering asking someone else for assistance. The man, in a dapper suit, grinned broadly as soon as he noticed me. "Well, if it's not an Anderson construction employee. Hey, Mr. Smith, nice to meet you again." It was this bank's highest-ranked employee, Mr. Smith, the branch manager. Now that someone I knew was here to talk, I experienced a sense of relief. Stanley's eyes widened in surprise as he witnessed our mutual greeting. "Do you know this person, Mr. Smith?" It was now Mr. Smith's turn to widen his eyes in surprise at Stanley's apprehensive question. "This is the son of the firm Anderson Construction, with whom we collaborate closely. Were you unable to identify Anderson Construction's uniform? Tell me not to know, please." Mr. Smith responded, practically daring Stanley to admit his lack of knowledge. Stanley's complexion went white. "Ha! The child. Scott, kindly come over here." Mr. Smith led the way and showed me to a room in the back. In the reception area, I took a seat on a lovely sofa and was given a cup of warm tea. I apologize for making you wait. What was it you and Stanley were talking about earlier? Mr. Smith apologized for his question. Stanley, who had accompanied me, sat opposite from me, next to Mr. Smith, and appeared to be quite uncomfortable. Sincerely, I mentioned that I had come in the early afternoon to take out money and had been purposefully kept waiting. I also talked about how my attire had made Stanley look down on me and how, in a fit of rage, I had grabbed him. Mr. Smith bowed so profoundly when I was done that his head almost touched the table. I sincerely apologize. This Stanley person had apparently only been moved here recently. It was wrong to alter his attitude because of a customer, even though it might be understood that he didn't know every one of them yet. Merely because someone is dressed for work does not give them the right to be looked down upon or judged. You're entirely correct, Scott. Mr. Smith bowed his head and said, "We sincerely apologize." Stanley only looked down, expressionless and colorless. Stanley didn't even appear to be aware that he had acted improperly. All he appeared to be afraid of was getting in trouble and the repercussions. "I'll be talking to my father about this incident," I said. Mr. Smith swiftly responded, "Please, anything but that." At what I had just stated. "I implore you to be forgiving. I truly apologize." Grandpa was still bowing, but thanks to his hard labor, the little construction company he had begun had expanded dramatically over the years. It had grown into a sizable company, Anderson Construction, capable of managing everything from public works projects to building projects. This neighborhood bank has been the principal business partner of our company since Grandpa's day. Even I was aware that the bank would suffer a significant loss if we ceased doing business with them. We're proud of these workwear items. I found it impossible to forgive Stanley for treating them with such disdain. Please apologize to him, Stanley. I apologize profusely, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith and Stanley both bowed profoundly in regret. It all felt a bit silly at this point. That suffices. Please show the same respect to everyone who enters today, not just myself. However, I will still tell my father about what happened today. After putting the cash I had taken out into my wallet, I walked out of the bank. Following that, I was able to bring Grandma the gift, and we headed out to the meal that was scheduled. I got Grandpa and Grandma each a set of spectacles. One of the cups ended up at Grandpa's shrine. I was aware that they had continued to wear matching bows in secret as a couple. Grandpa and Grandma both cherished objects created by talented craftspeople. Thus, I thought these two artistically cut glasses in various colors would be ideal for them when I saw them. I figured that when I got old enough, I'd serve Grandpa's favorite liquor with this glass, since I still couldn't buy it. Grandma was overjoyed, and it gave me comfort to see her smile after all this time. As could be expected, Dad was incensed when I told him what had happened at the bank. Furious, he went inside the bank, threatening to sever our business ties. To be honest, I was shocked that he went to that extent because I hadn't anticipated it. But after Mr. Smith begged my father, knowing the bank would collapse if we left, they came to a compromise. Stanley would lose his job, but our company would stay open. I was so repulsed that I chose to transfer my account from one bank to another and close it. Grandpa's estate was inherited by Grandma and Dad, who closed their personal accounts and relocated them. Grandma's account alone involved several tens of millions of dollars. Therefore, the bank lost a significant amount, even though it was merely a personal account. According to rumors, Stanley not only damaged the bank's reputation, but was also sued for damages for the losses he created after being sacked. I'm confident he got what he deserved because he ridiculed our values, humiliated us, and discriminated against consumers. I worried whether Grandpa was observing me, even though I couldn't show him my work attire in person. Were his work attire from heaven the same ones as his? He'd had said that I was a decent guy and a grandson to be proud of, so I had to make sure I lived up to that. Grandpa's photos always had him looking so good. I made the decision to live a proud life, both of my work and of myself, determined not to let these work clothes or Grandpa down.